On January 30, 1989, a boy named Brandon Swanson from Marshall, Minnesota, USA was born. Since his childhood, the boy was a friendly, intelligent, and fun-loving boy. His parents couldn't keep track of him. He was always playing with someone and running away from home and returning late at night. But on May 14, 2008, 1:45 in the morning, Brandon was coming home tired and wanted to go to sleep. At such a late hour, this guy was at a friend's house where he had a great night, but it is not known if he was drinking that night. If our hero in today's video was a heavy drinker, and on the way home, he is completely sleepy and tired, accidentally drives off into a ditch. Our hero was very scared. It seems to be driving straight on the road, but it was on the outskirts of the road. He went out to look around. What about the car and whether he can get out on his own? But he failed. The car is stuck. The first thing that comes to mind is to call his parents, as most likely friends will not pick up the phone. Still takes the phone and calls his parents. The phone call wakes up his father, Brian Swanson, and his mother, Annette. The father answers the phone and realizes his son is calling him. Brandon explains where he is, and he asks the father to help him get his car out. The father realizes that it is very close to 10-15 minutes from their home. Brandon and his parents know the area well. Swanson was very familiar with the 30-mile road from Canby to Marshall, as he drove that route almost every day. There are few cars in the area, and the trip usually took about 35 minutes. My parents quickly got dressed and jumped in their pickup truck. They kept calling each other on the road, and in a few minutes they were at the location Brandon had given them. The parents arrived very quickly to help their son, literally within 20 minutes of their son's call. But there was a real mystery story when they arrived, where their son had driven his Chevy Lumina into a pothole and they didn't see him or his car. They called their son on his cell phone and told him they were there. But they didn't see him or his car. After a couple minutes, they started flashing the lights of their pickup truck, hoping Brandon might see them. They were surprised when Brandon said he couldn't hear their horn or see any lights on the road. They asked Brandon if he was sure he was in the right place, and he confidently said he was. Then the young boy had no idea what was going on and decides to call his parents again and offer a version of where they can meet, but unfortunately it was the last call. He walked across the field in the direction of the lights and asked his parents to meet him in the parking lot of a popular nightclub in Linda. He even sees the lights of the city as he thinks. He walks for over 40 minutes and talks to his father. At the 47th minute, he says a strange thing to his father. But Brandon never answered them. They tried to call him back, but after 5-6 rings, the ringing stopped and went to voicemail. This strange phrase was the last thing they heard from their son. Brandon has not been found alive or dead so far. Now, I want to tell you more about him. Before this incident, what kind of person he was, where he went to school, and how he lived his life. After graduating from high school in 2007, he enrolled at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. He was going to tie his life to renewable energy development. He also loved history. He watched and read a lot of documentary and scientific literature. He was very attached to his family, got along well with his sister, and always found time to visit his grandparents. He was not a troubled teenager. Authorities dismissed the possibility of a runaway or other reason for his disappearance because he is included in the FBI database. It's a database where people go missing when authorities suspect that the cause of their disappearance is a violent death. But what was learned about his disappearance? Well, there's not a lot of theories as to why he drove off into the pit. The theory that he was drunk doesn't hold up. His friends testified that he wasn't drunk when he left their house. His mother, Annette, spoke to him that night, and she denies that he was drunk. Also, his father states that in the 47-minute conversation, he did not notice the drunken speech, and I think his father and mother would have noticed it quickly. The possible reason for the move-out is stated to be that he was very tired that day. He left home early in the morning and returned late at night. At 6:30 a.m., his parents reported Brandon missing to the Linda police. At first, they were told that it was not unusual for young people of that age to stay out all night after the last day of college classes. Annette Swanson specifically recalled that one of the police officers said Brandon had a right to be reported missing. Immediately that morning, Linda police began searching but found no trace of Brandon in or out of town. They contacted the Lyon County Sheriff Joel Dahl's office to request assistance. To better focus the search, the sheriff's office obtained Brandon's cell phone records, which showed that Brandon had called from near Taunton along State Highway 68, the main route to Canby, northwest of Marshall, 25 miles from Lind. When police obtained Brandon's cell phone records, they discovered that on the night he disappeared, he was indeed near Porter, which is about 25 miles from where he told his parents he was. Shortly afterwards, his car was found in a ditch near Taunton. The police decided they needed to find Brandon's trail, so they decided to use search dogs to help them find where he had gone. The police asked his family for some items from his closet so the dogs could see who they were looking for. Eventually, after the police officers put his clothes in front of the dogs' noses, the dogs found the trail a few seconds later. Apparently, because the trail was still fresh, they picked it up. Eventually, the police officers were able to figure out that Brandon was walking through the fields toward Porter, but thought he was going back to Lind. He came to the Yellow Medicine River. He walked by the river for a while. One of the dogs even jumped into the river, but then got out and led further near the river, and then the trail broke. After the initial search turned up no sign of Swanson, most efforts were abandoned. Sheriff Wysecki continued to circle his neighborhood every day to look for any clues in the area every day for 30 days. The Swansons left the porch light on all night every night as a symbol of their hope that Brandon would eventually return or be found, and it still is. The search decided to resume in the late fall of that year, after the fields that had been planted shortly after the disappearance were cleaned up. The dogs involved in this search were specially trained to be able to scent for human remains in an area northwest of Porter that had not been searched before. The police thought, why not go around the area with the dogs if they were lucky enough to find something? The effort resumed in the spring after the snow melted, but before sowing. The cycle continued until 2011. By then, 122 square miles had been surveyed. So what are the theories of his disappearance? Police immediately considered the wild animal attack version unlikely, as search dogs would have quickly located the site of the attack and eventually found the remains. Also, the parents could have heard the sounds of the attack on the phone. The abduction version was also considered unlikely. Escape was also ruled out. Brandon was very attached to his family and had no motive to leave his family. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the new videos.